Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. Charles McCullough is an Obama-appointed Inspector General for the intelligence community, a job he had till early this year. And last year, he tried to raise the alarm about classified information, a lot of it, that was stored on Hillary Clinton's now famous email server. Tonight, he will tell you more specifically about who threatened him for sounding that alarm. But here's what he told our Catherine Herridge exclusively on this program last night.
What should the American public know about those 22 top secret Clinton emails?
I've heard people say this is overblown. I've heard people say this is much ado about nothing. Had the information been released, there would have been harm to national security.
So putting lives at risk.
Absolutely. Sources and methods, lives, operations.
Favorite camera. Well, instead of being taken seriously, remarkably, McCullough says he was ignored, he was sabotaged, he was outright threatened for telling the truth about what he found. We want to know more about that, who threatened him and why. And to answer those questions, Charles McCullough joins us tonight on our set. Mr. McCullough, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Tucker.
So among the people who came down on you for exposing what you found on Hillary's email server was Senator Dianne Feinstein of California.
Sure.
She was asked today about that by a reporter walking through the Congress, and she responded, "Not that I know of, and I don't remember," applying pressure to you in response to what you found. How do you respond to that?
Well, she certainly was one of the primary drafters on a letter we received back in March of 2016 that was signed by 7 Democrats, I believe, that accused us of ironically politicizing the matter when we were the ones kind of being very strict about just firing balls straight down the middle with this and shooting straight as it was. But now, her main concern, she and I talked on the telephone about this. I had a secure telephone conversation with her when this first happened, and her main concern was asking me whether or not the documents were marked. And I tried to explain over and over again, as I did then for the next year and a half, that it didn't really matter what was marked, that no, none of them were really marked, other than 3, but that didn't seem to get through.
Were marked classified.
Were marked classified, that's right.
Right, so this is what, and I should say, you served for decades non-politically in government. You were an FBI agent. You worked at NSA for 10 years. You had the highest possible clearances, so it's not like you were some appointee hack.
No.
But you often hear defenders of Secretary Clinton say, well, there were just 3 documents marked classified. That's not a big deal. Yeah,
this is maddening, frankly. It doesn't matter whether or not it's absolutely irrelevant whether or not something is marked classified.
Right.
It's the character of the information. We have an intelligence community with very good men and women who collect intelligence, and that information gets disseminated. And even if the information isn't marked properly when it's disseminated, it's still classified. What matters is the information, not the marking on it.
Right, and that's a legal definition. What matters legally.
Absolutely.
Right. So the intelligence agencies discovered that some information, classified information they had gathered, was on her unsecured server. What was their response to that?
Well, there was from minute number 1. I actually, when this happened, we tried to coordinate with the State Department. We tried to coordinate with everybody on the Hill, and initially we thought maybe we can sort of corral this in and mitigate whatever damage had occurred. But literally from minute number 1, whether it was certain officials at the State Department or whether it was the Clinton campaign or whether it was certain folks on the Hill, it was nothing but contention and adversarial posture and fighting. It literally was this. You're making much ado about nothing. This is overblown.
You were acting as the Inspector General. You're supposed to have some independence here. Again, you're a career government employee and a former FBI agent. Why would the Clinton campaign have anything to do with this conversation?
They shouldn't have. They shouldn't have. So there was. I'm well aware there was strategic coordination between the campaign, the State Department, certain officials in the State Department, certain law firms in town, and people on Capitol Hill. And I think that bore itself out in the Podesta emails.
I think that's right. But the basic question, is it legal for a government agency to coordinate with a political campaign?
Well, there are rules and authorities that apply, and people have been looking at those. but I'm not aware. I've been gone out of the government since last March, so I'm not aware that anything was ever pursued with that.
My understanding was there are statutes designed to protect whistleblowers, which in effect you were.
I was a whistleblower. As an IG, my job was to bring whistleblowers to the Hill, get them there and protect them, put a bubble around them, make sure they can tell their story. And here I'm doing now what I've done for all these years. I'm having to go myself to the Hill. I expected to be embraced and protected, and let's do this, let's get through this. And I didn't get that. I recall a conversation I had with a staff director on the Hill on one account where he chided me for not considering the political consequences of what I was doing. And I said, I'm an inspector general. That's my job, is not to consider the political consequences. It was one of the staff directors for one of the committees on the Hill that we worked with a lot. I don't want to name his name right now. He's no longer there, as a matter of fact.
But political considerations, by definition, should have no bearing on this, correct?
Absolutely not for an IG. As an IG, you're not a D, you're not an R, you're an I. You're an IG. Those are the letters that matter for you. And so, obviously, what they resorted to was, okay, this guy's just a pawn of the right. He's a shill of the right, and attack the messenger, and that's what happened.
So just to sum up, to make sure I have this absolutely clear, you, in effect, heard complaints from the intelligence agencies that their information was residing on an unsecured server. They were upset about it. You bring these concerns to the Congress, and you're dismissed as a right-wing plant.
Absolutely. That's a good point. I mean, so the agencies were quite unhappy about what was going on. They were not happy that their information was not protected the way it should have been. This was seen as cavalier. Look, when we heard about this to begin with, that there was an unsecured server, frankly, we looked at each other and said, "Who does that? What rules even apply to that?"
Does that?
And so, and then Senator Burr sent a letter over asking us to take a look at it, and we did with the State Department IG.
It was a scandal then. It's a scandal now, I think. Mr. McCullough, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Tucker. Very much. Appreciate it.
We're joined now by Fox senior political analyst Brit Hume. Brit, I don't know if you just heard that, but now that the passions of the campaign have cooled, it's over, and we can look at this in the clear light of post-election America. That seems like the campaign politicizing what should be a completely non-political process of assessing whether information is secure, and that seems like a scandal to me.
It sounds for all the world, Tucker, as if this man was simply doing what it was his job to do, which is to bring this sort of information forward and indeed to take it to Congress. He did it for other whistleblowers, as he described, and he was doing it on his own in this case, expecting, as he, I guess, naively did, that he was going to get a friendly, warm reception with people eager to hear about this abuse, this gross mishandling of classified information, as he describes it. And you've got these political actors on the Hill trying to shut him down and telling him he should be concerned about the political implications. That is obviously howlingly improper. And, you know, it plays back into this question of, all right, Hillary Clinton is now gone. She's basically, although she's, you know, we're still hearing from her and she's writing books and giving interviews and saying things, it's pretty clear that she's not going to be the president and that her public life is largely over. But what about these other actors in the drama on Capitol Hill and elsewhere who were trying to basically suppress this? It seems to me that there's some accountability is required there, and that's probably where this story ought to go.
Give us some perspective. It strikes me as inherently improper for a political campaign to be coordinating with government agencies about a matter related to national security like this. Is it?
Well, I think it's common, but it's certainly a little different when you're dealing with classified information, which has a special standing in our system. This is very sensitive stuff. It has national security implications. And what this man was clearly doing was trying to bring to the attention of the authorities on the Hill something a case where classified information had been very badly mishandled, recklessly mishandled, one might say. And what he got was interference from a political campaign. That may have happened in the past, Tucker, but it's never become public, and I've never heard of it. So I think this is highly unusual. And the sense you have is everybody said, look, you know, you got to be careful here. This is explosive stuff. It could affect the outcome of the election, which is precisely the calculus that you know is in the mind of James Comey when he's trying to figure out what to do with this investigation. And we now know that he wrote ahead of time before his investigation was done, you know, a memo declining to charge her, outlining the reasons for not doing so. And then, of course, in the end, he didn't, although he came very close to outlining what could be a pretty solid case against her in the famous news conference that he held. Yes. So this is the kind of thing that happens when political calculus enters into these decisions. In the one case of Comey, it was a Justice Department decision about prosecution. You had a compromised attorney general who had the famous tarmac meeting with Bill Clinton and so on. And all adds up to a case, and now another case outlined here, of political interference with matters that ought not be political.
It seems like exactly what you don't want from your government, and almost designed to shake our faith in it. Britt Hume, thank you for that perspective. Appreciate it.
Brett Tucker.
A refugee from Somalia kidnapped 2 women and raped them at knife point. Not only is he still here in this country, he's not in prison. We'll tell you why next. A Somali refugee who violently raped 2 women has been spared prison time by a judge in Utah. Fox reporter Alicia Acuna has more on that story. Alicia?
Hi, Tucker. Yeah, Muhammad Ali Mohammed, a refugee from Somalia, was in the United States for less than a year when in the summer of 2011, he admits he raped 2 women in Salt Lake City. He was just 14 at the time when one night he says he sexually assaulted a woman at knife point outside her home. And the next night broke into another woman's home, raped her, then forced her to go to an ATM to withdraw $400 for him to spend on clothes for his first day in the 9th grade. A surveillance camera helped investigators track him down. He was charged with first-degree felony rape, second-degree felony forcible sexual abuse, and kidnapping. He pleaded guilty and was sentenced to a juvenile detention center. His family testified that while in the Somali refugee camp, he witnessed his own brother's murder and was sexually assaulted himself. Now, after serving 6 years, Ali Mohammed is about to turn 21. He's aging out of the juvie system and is eligible to continue serving time as an adult at the Utah State Prison. Instead, Judge Vernice Treese of the 3rd District Court in Utah sentenced him to 5 years probation, telling Ali Mohammed that she wouldn't bat an eye to send him to prison if he violates his probation. In court, Ali Mohammed told Judge Treese that, quote, "I was a monster. I didn't know what I was thinking. I was a very stupid kid." But Tucker, one of his victims, before the sentencing of probation, told the judge that she was terrified at the thought of this man being out on the streets again. Some of the volunteers who worked at the detention center, say they believe that this man has turned himself around, but the victims are very concerned. Tucker.
Alicia, thank you. Well, in case you missed it over the weekend, there was a fascinating piece in Politico with the following counterintuitive title: "America is running out of Muslim clerics, and that's dangerous." According to the article, the administration's travel ban, the supposedly fascist one that affects just 6 out of dozens of majority Muslim countries, is causing a perilous shortage of Islamic clergy in this country. That is terrifying, explains Politico, because, quote, "with no imam to guide them, Muslims could soon turn elsewhere for direction with possibly radical consequences." It's kind of a weird thing to say when you think about it. We've been told for years that Islamic extremists are just a tiny minority within Islam. Foreign Muslims, our leaders have assured us again and again, are no more dangerous than native-born Americans. Probably less dangerous, actually, because native-born Americans are horrible, as they often point out. And yet, according to Politico, young Muslims may spontaneously become violent if they don't get the right kind of imams, even though their faith and culture have nothing to do with violence. Well, it's funny how you never hear the same reasoning applied to other faiths. There is, by the way, a shortage of Episcopal priests in this country. Have you noticed a wave of Episcopalianism terrorism? Has Chuck Schumer demanded we import more Buddhist monks just to make sure young Buddhists don't murder the rest of us? Probably not. Instead, they're telling us what they've always told us: it's completely safe to admit more Muslims into America, and bigoted even to question that assumption. And by the way, if you do question it, Muslim extremists might kill you. Well, pro-illegal immigrant activists are mounting a year-end offensive, pressuring Congress to grant amnesty to DACA recipients. It's been close to 3 months since the Trump administration announced it was ending DACA. That's the Obama-era program that grants work permits to hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants. There's been talk of a deal, but so far one has not appeared. Ali Noorani is executive director of the National Immigration Forum, and he joins us tonight. Mr. Noorani, thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me, Tucker.
So I think there are two sides to this argument, for sure, actually. I think it's a complicated one. But I also wonder about the priority it's been given. So there are tens of thousands of people living on the street in America. The middle class is actually dying younger than it used to. We've got millions of Americans addicted to drugs. Why is the fate of DACA recipients number one on the congressional agenda? And both sides seem to think it is. I'm a little confused by that.
Well, that's a really good question, Tucker. And you know what? The way I look at this is that historic presidents are the presidents that surprise you. And President Trump has this incredible opportunity to surprise us in that he can improve our national security, grow our economy, and fix a slice of the immigration system, and be the first president in decades to do so. Presidents Bush and Obama were completely unable to do so. So for President Trump to lean in on Democrats and force them to the table on border security measures, ensuring that DACA recipients are passing criminal background checks, but then also along the way continuing to grow our economy, because these are young people who are contributing to various parts of our economy, but then ultimately making sure that these young people are owning the American dream. And the best part about it, Tucker, is that by doing this, President Trump is meeting the needs of 79% of Republican voters and realigning the party for Latino voters overall. And I got to say, that's a pretty historic move.
Yeah, well, he already actually surprised, I think, a lot of people already by winning the presidency, and he did so by running on a platform of building a wall along our southern border and deporting people here illegally. Why not just do that? It's what he promised to do. It's how he got elected president. I mean, you just said he should be acting according to his promises. Would you be excited for him to do that?
Well, you remember on September 5th of this year, when he sunsetted the DACA program, President Trump said that he wanted a solution that said, quote, makes everybody happy. So let's make sure that we can make sure that those DACA recipients are able to be protected from deportation and continue to contribute to our economy.
But wait a second.
In terms of border security, that's your question, right? We believe we need smart border security. So let's spend billions of dollars on the border where the majority of drugs, guns, and money are being smuggled. You know where that is? Ports of entry. Let's improve the infrastructure. Let's get boots on the ground there.
You know what? I don't believe you. We've been talking about this for decades, and it's all a lie. The point is to grant a pathway to citizenship to the people who are here legally. And my question has always been, isn't there already a pathway to citizenship? It's U.S. embassies around the world grant 1 million green cards to people. Why shouldn't everyone here illegally go get in line with everybody else who wants to become a citizen and do that? I've never really understood why we wouldn't ask that of people.
You know, that's another great question, because that's why Congress needs to come together as Republicans and Democrats to create an immigration system that meets the needs of American workers and their families. Right now, our immigration system does not do that. We've got talent going overseas. We've got jobs going overseas where that talent is stuck outside of the country.
That's just, look, the cities with, you know, pick one, Lowell, Massachusetts, Lewiston, Maine. Cities are flooded with immigrants, have high unemployment and tons of poverty. That's not axiomatic that the more immigrants you have, the richer you are. That's just not true. But you're not answering my question, which is why is an American living in a country in economic decline where people are making less than their parents and they know it, should granting amnesty and citizenship to people here legally be number one on my priority list? That's my only question. Why should your average American think that's the most important thing?
I'm going to be the first person to say that the immigration system needs to serve the needs of the American worker and their families. So let's pick a place. Let's look at southern Idaho. Unemployment rate of 3%. Third largest dairy industry in the nation. The only way that dairy industry continues to grow is if they have an immigrant workforce that is creating jobs for Idahoans who have been there for generations. That's the kind of balance that we're looking for here, Tucker.
Yeah. You'd have to explain the economics of California, which has actually carried out this experiment for the last 30 years and now has more poverty than any state, to convince me of it. But nice try. Ali, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, thank you.
Elizabeth Warren stole American Indian heritage to get ahead, to get tenure at Harvard. Up next, we'll ask why everyone has let her get away with it. We'll be right back.
We're here long before any of us were here. Although we have a representative in Congress who they say was here a long time ago. They call her Pocahontas. But you know what? I like you because you are special. You are special people.
You know, even if you didn't vote for him, you got to concede that's hilarious. That was the president, of course, yesterday singling out Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren for spending at least 9 years pretending to be an American Indian in order to get a better job. It's called fraud. Well, exalted minds like CNN's Jim Acosta called Trump's use of the name Pocahontas a racial slur. But who's the racist here? Elizabeth Warren falsely claimed Indian ancestry for years. It got her tenure at Harvard. Nisu Washanog, or Two Hawks, is the general director of the Federation of Aboriginal Nations of America. Unlike Elizabeth Warren, he has not received a six-figure Ivy League academic job by falsely claiming to be an Indian. In fact, he can't even get the bloated hedge fund known as Brown University to return stolen American Indian land that it owns, though he is trying, and we're supporting him in that. Two Hawks joins us tonight. Two Hawks, it's great to see you.
How you doing, Tucker? Great to be here.
Before I ask you about Elizabeth Warren and whether you've ever run into her at any kind of tribal gathering, an update on your effort to reclaim land that Brown University, you say, stole from your ancestors and is used to miseducate our kids with their fake university hedge fund operation that they have. Have you gotten the land back from Brown?
Oh, well, they signed an agreement a couple weeks ago, and we're going through the process right now. Steps moving forward at our pace. We're the ones controlling it, so they're definitely moving forward in a positive manner. But no, they haven't given the land over yet.
Did you take our advice and stage a protest on the Quad?
No, we didn't have to. I think that once they saw the last interview I did with you, the tenor of the conversation changed a bit. So we appreciate the support and awareness.
Well, we're on your side. They claim to be sensitive, but are they really? You know the answer. So Elizabeth Warren, how does it make you feel? Here, she claims to be an American Indian and gets a six-figure job at an Ivy League school. You just want the land that your ancestors had back from Brown University. You don't get tenure. I mean, have you gotten a tenured position at Brown?
No, absolutely not. And I think particularly being from the region where we're from, the Eastern Woodlands, and being Algonquian, it's a bit of an insult because we have to constantly struggle on a daily basis with the stereotypical views of what a American Indian is supposed to look like. So for someone to kind of throw that on when it's advantageous and then take it off when it's not, that's a bit of an insult, absolutely.
So why do you think one Ivy League university awarded a multi-$100,000 contract to Elizabeth Warren on the basis of fake Indian ancestry, and the Ivy League university you're dealing with has blown you off for so long?
There's a lot of speculation to that. Perhaps it's the circles that she's moving in, people that she knows, the fact that she knows how to play the game. I couldn't quite speak directly to it, but I do think it is an issue and something that needs to be addressed.
So I don't think she's ever clarified. She's never taken the $89 Ancestry.com test that could, settle this once and for all. But from your knowledge of indigenous peoples, have you ever run into her at any gatherings? Is she a well-known American Indian?
I haven't seen her around, not in these parts. I don't want to speak on behalf of all Indian folks across the country, but we definitely haven't seen her around these parts, and I haven't run into her, so I couldn't say yay or nay.
But there are not a lot of American Indians in New England. I mean, I don't want to generalize. There are some tribes, of course you're one of them, but you feel like you would know. I mean, if there was an American Indian tenured Harvard law professor running around, wouldn't you know about it?
I would imagine that someone around would have bumped into her at some sort of social gathering or some sort of interaction with the other populations that are around. So no, I can't say that I have.
Okay. Well, it suggests, again, we can't confirm it because she hasn't taken a simple DNA test, but it suggests maybe she's lying. Two Hawks, we just wish you all the luck in the world in your battle against that corporate university for your ancestors' land, and I hope you'll keep us apprised of what happens.
Top of Tish Tucker, thank you very much for your time.
Amen. Well, the press had a total meltdown over the president's comments about Pocahontas, acting like they were the worst atrocity since Wounded Knee.
I think there's an element of racism, but I think it's also because he knows he can use it and stoke it to drive the most controversy.
This is unreal. I totally agree with Megan. Not only did he say that, which is considered by many a racial slur, he was standing in front of a portrait of Andrew Jackson.
We need to begin to acknowledge this is not just about name calling. It's not about name calling in politics. It's about a bigot who sits at 1600 Pennsylvania.
It's always sort of poking and prodding and making jokes and making attacks at the expense of people who are not white.
How did all the dumb people get on TV? Joe Concha may know. He watches it for a living. He covers media for the Hill newspaper, and he joins us tonight. So, Joe, what gets me about this is here you have someone who falsely claimed to be an historically oppressed minority in order to get a job reserved for members of that group, American Indians, totally lied in order to make money, and that's cool. And yet someone who jokes about it is the bigot. Like, how does that work exactly?
Well, look, the narrative, I think, Tucker, should be, and if this were the narrative, then we ain't talking right now, that President Trump made an unnecessary and inappropriate comment during a solemn ceremony at the White House to Navajo code talkers. If that were the case, fine. We have
I
no
thought
problem.
it was hilarious, but whatever. I'm happy to be in the minority on that. That's
Some
fine.
don't. That's fine. Half and half, right? Everything in this country is half and half. But then the media overplays its hand, like it does every time. Not all, but most. The prevailing narrative suddenly became that Senator Warren is an innocent victim of a racial attack by the President of the United States. And the reason why I know that became the prevalent narrative is because I looked at the questions during the White House press briefing yesterday. Now, this is a breakdown per the official White House transcript. Questions about Elizabeth Warren or Pocahontas, 7. Number of times racial slur or racially were broached as it relates to the name Pocahontas, 7. Number of questions about the Access Hollywood tape, 4. Number of questions about Alabama Republican Senate candidate Roy Moore, 2. Here's the kicker. Number of questions about sitting Democratic Senator Al Franken, who had just held a press conference saying that he was staying in the Senate despite several accusers coming forward, including photo evidence of him groping a woman while she was asleep. 1. Number of questions about Democratic Congressman John Conyers. 0. Add that all up, you have 13 questions about Senator Warren, Pocahontas, the Access Hollywood tape, and Roy Moore, while 1 question combined about Al Franken or John Conyers.
I mean, actually, this is why Roy Moore is going to get elected, not because of him, but because the media is so irresponsible and loathsome. But let me just ask you this, and it's not, if you don't like what Trump said, I totally get it. You know, I can see why people would be offended by it. What I don't understand is why Elizabeth Warren gets a pass for basically, how is this different from wearing blackface? How is this different from, like, mocking someone's, in effect, in the most cynical possible way, someone else's ethnicity in order to profit from it? Yeah. I don't know why that's okay.
Because the context is purposely being left to the side. What was the context here? Trump wasn't directing his insult towards those Navajo code talkers. It wasn't towards anybody's heritage. He was mocking a woman, a sitting U.S. senator who could be a 2020 presidential candidate, for pretending to be something that she wasn't to advance her career. This was during the 90s, remember. Harvard was under a lot of pressure to hire minorities, and they went ahead with that. And if you see every interview with Elizabeth Warren yesterday, after the fact, this is barely touched. She is barely pressed on the question. The answer she gives is that her mother and her grandparents told her when she was young what her heritage was.
It's such a crock. And by the way, she could fix it. She could end the mystery with a simple Ancestry.com. But by the way, this is just like a metaphor for the whole system, which is designed to help the oppressed, but actually benefits the already entitled, like Elizabeth Warren. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And Tucker, look, and when I'm
the sons of African dictators benefit from programs designed to help the needy in this country. I mean, it's like, it's very cynical.
Right. And when I'm 8 and my parents tell me that I'm Scotch Romanian or Comanche Indians, I'll believe them. But as I get older and I go through enough holidays and I do enough research on my heritage, I don't put it on an application or tell Harvard or Penn that that's what I am. And if she just apologizes for it now, then it goes away. But she won't. She stands by it. And the irony is that she calls out Wall Street for gaming the system. It appears that she gamed the system as well, Tucker.
Yeah, I would say so. Joe Concha, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, the woman accusing Democratic Congressman John Conyers of sexual harassment joins us on the set next. Melanie Melanie Sloan was the longtime executive director of the progressive watchdog group Citizens for Ethics and Responsibility in Washington, CREW. She's also a senior advisor at American Oversight and a former federal prosecutor. Before all of that, she was a congressional staffer working on a committee under Congressman John Conyers of Michigan. And while working there, she now says Conyers harassed her. At first, Nancy Pelosi didn't seem to believe that account. Watch.
Just because someone is accused, and was it one accusation? Is it two? I think there has to be. John Conyers is an icon in our country.
Do you believe John Conyers is accused?
I don't know who they are. Do you? They have not really come forward. And that gets
So you don't know if you believe the accusations?
That's for the Ethics Committee to review.
Now, after speaking directly with Sloan, Pelosi says she has changed her mind. Melanie Sloan joins us tonight. Melanie, thanks for coming on.
My pleasure.
So I was a little surprised by the reaction from Leader Pelosi, who is a self-described champion of women and has told us many times to believe the women. Why wouldn't she have called you before weighing in on the Conyers question?
Well, I think that she may not have actually known about me. The whole thing blew up over the Thanksgiving holiday,
right.
and it's not clear that she knew. But when she spoke with me yesterday, and we spoke for 45 minutes by phone, she was clear that she believed me, and she also apologized for her statements on Meet the Press, and I think that was big of her.
Well, sure, but I mean, she also took a ton of heat for those statements.
Absolutely, and including from me. I was very upset about it.
I know, and I'm sure you would vote for her. I mean, you agree with her politically, but I think you're in the right on this one. But, you know, she's the ranking Democrat in the Congress. John Conyers kind of reports to her. She's in charge. She could find out who you were, like with a single phone call. She's preparing to go and meet the press, not something members of Congress do lightly. You know, you kind of like get what you're going to say together ahead of time. Why wouldn't she have done diligence on something as important as an accusation of sex harassment?
I don't know. I can't speak for what happened in Nancy Pelosi's office before that. All I can say is I agree with you. It was a terrible performance on Meet the Press. It was very disappointing to me. I reached out to her office that morning, Sunday morning, and said that I was very disappointed. And I also tweeted about it. Not that I have a big following, but I said that I was unhappy about it and that I had come forward. So it was upsetting. And Nancy Pelosi did call yesterday and apologize, and then we spoke at length not just about the allegations themselves, but about really the more important issue of what Congress should do now.
So what I guess I'm surprised and not surprised by is to hear all the people coming forward to say, yeah, of course Conyers is a creep. Like, we knew that. You heard Cokie Roberts say all the female reporters knew not to be alone with him for years. The guy married a former intern who was 25. He was 61. Everybody knew that.
Yep.
Why did it take this long?
I don't know why it took this long. I think for the same reasons that it's taken so long in so many industries and things have gone unstated, and you know, everybody knew about Harvey Weinstein. It seems like everybody knew about Roger Ailes. These were things that were well known for years and years, and women are quickly dismissed and allegations are denied, and any woman who comes forward goes through a really rough time of having her credibility assaulted. When I actually did try to talk about...
Hold on, that's just... Let me just say, I had no idea about Roger Ailes, just for whatever it's worth. But I would also say that's silly. I mean, you're a former prosecutor. I've known you for a long time. You're a strong person. You wouldn't be dismissed. Cokie Roberts has a national
But I actually was. I mean, let me just say that when I did try to talk to people about John Conyers 20 years ago, I talked to any number of people, including a reporter who then checked my story for corroboration with somebody else in Conyers' office who told them that I was mentally unstable. And although I knew this reporter for a long time and had worked with him, he then came back to me and said, well, this person says you might be mentally unstable, so now I can't do the story.
It seems like a lot of what's going on is that Conyers is politically useful and there really are no enemies on the left from the perspective of liberals, and like no one wanted to criticize him. Maybe if his politics had been different, the outcome would have been different. Do you think?
Well, it's certainly possible, but I think that people should be slow to throw stones on that account, because I think we're going to see this on both sides. Conyers may be the one we're talking about today, but in the coming weeks, I'm sure there will be others. It's not as if there aren't many members of Congress with these kind of problems.
For sure. I actually agree with you. I mean, there are creepy people on all sides. That's for sure. But I just thought Pelosi's response was so telling. She said, he's an icon.
Yeah.
It seemed like a non sequitur to me. In other words, I like the way he voted, therefore shut up.
Well, I think she was talking about his long history in the civil rights movement, that he's an icon, but she later did say that that doesn't give him license for this kind of conduct. And again, I'm agreeing with you that the Meet the Press performance was wrong and mistaken, but she has walked it back and said that that does not give him an excuse. It's not a license to mistreat people. And I think that is one of the things we're seeing in every industry. Does the fact that somebody has great stature in their industry allow them to mistreat women?
Yeah, or mistreat staff. I mean, he was accused of making a staff campaign for his wife, who later went to jail on bribery charges, you know, babysit his kids, drive them around. You would babysit the kids. So, like, I don't know, that's a form of harassment, too. No,
that is. And actually, that was more what happened to me. I wasn't sexually harassed. I was abused by Congressman Conyers. He was horrible to me. And there was the one time where I walked in on him in his office in his underwear, but I wasn't propositioned. He didn't touch me inappropriately. Those things didn't happen to me.
Underwear?
Yeah.
Bizarre. Melanie Song, thank you.
Thank you.
In his underwear. That's your Congress. A billionaire Democratic donor is spending $20 million on a push to impeach the president. Why is he doing that? We'll tell you next. Tom Steyer is a billionaire Democratic donor and an environmental activist and a big investor in fossil fuels, too. He spent millions trying to stop the Keystone Pipeline and elect Hillary Clinton, neither of which worked. But now he's got a new project. He says he's going to spend $20 million of his own dollars on a TV ad campaign calling for the president's impeachment. He's just the most recent of many who have joined that cause.
I don't think there's any question that he has, in fact, met that standard for impeachment, but it's very important and urgent that we get him out of office.
The president has obstructed justice. The remedy for obstruction of justice is impeachment.
Impeach 45! Impeach 45! I didn't hear you. Impeach 45! Thank you.
Mark Green's been around Democratic politics for decades at many levels, and he joins us tonight to assess this impeach Trump campaign. Mark, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me back.
So, you know, there's disagreement among Democrats about whether Trump should be impeached before Mueller finishes investigation or after, but there's pretty wide agreement among Democrats, at least in D.C., that he ought to be impeached. Let's say that happens. What happens next? Would you be happy with President Pence?
I completely disagree with earnest progressive Democrats who say, tactically, not legally, oh, let's not impeach Trump because Pence will be worse. First, they don't know it. You and I don't know better or worse, really. It's so speculative. But Justice Leonard Hand wrote, "Let justice be done even if the heavens fall," close quote. And so if Donald Trump has committed impeachable offenses, whether he's succeeded by Albert Schweitzer or Richard Nixon coming back, the law should do what it's supposed to do. Now, politically...
Pardon me while I laugh. I mean, it's just like so dumb. The last president who was impeached committed perjury, and I think I remember you saying, oh, it doesn't rise to the level. I mean, this is totally political. That's fine. It's a political process. Well, let's just admit it. Don't call Learned Hand. I mean, please.
Excuse me. Clearly, it's by and large a political process. Gerald Ford, as president, said impeachment is whatever a majority of the Congress thinks. It's not a judicial process, otherwise they would have given it to the Supreme Court.
Exactly.
But, you know, every so often when someone wants to impeach Chief Justice Earl Warren or Barack Obama, and then you say, why? It's fringe, it's conspiratorial, it's a joke. As we speak, 49% of the public in the PPP poll last month think Donald Trump should be impeached. That's not sufficient. 41% think he should not. So something is going on. Now, tactically, I'm admitting that I think it would look bad to try to impeach before the Mueller process has been completed, on the chance that they exonerate Trump or they indict Trump, who knows. Also, politically, let's face it, the House Republicans will do nothing independent of Trump. And so it's a completely compromised jury.
But I wonder, well, no, I mean, they're from the same party. Of course, they're not going to be for impeachment. But I wonder, so Steyer is spending another $20 million.
Right.
And I wonder, like, maybe it would be better for the cause liberalism to maybe spend that money, I don't know, helping the millions of Americans who are addicted to drugs or who can't find jobs, who are living on the streets in liberal cities across the country, or who think they're going to make less than their parents did, which is the majority of the middle class. Why not solve those problems and you win?
A liberal like Tom Steyer doesn't listen to your advice on how to spend his money, just like the Koch brothers, who are worth $100 billion. Steyer's worth puny $1 billion. Will listen to me. The reason that he doesn't want to do that, I think, I don't know Tom Steyer, only one person in the world could provoke a nuclear war with North Korea because of his infantile tweets. Only one person in the world will allow the EPA and now the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau to be effectively denuded and eliminated because his business donors don't like it. That's according to Lindsey Graham.
Grotesque oversight. I mean, look, here's the point. Trump got elected for a reason. Hold on, but Trump got elected for a reason, like him or not. The middle class is dying in this country. It's a disaster.
Trump wasn't elected. Trump wasn't elected.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Putin put him in there. Look, if you're going to be in that case, right? Okay.
He lost the vote. So don't give me the people think this. The people opposed him, and the 1789 Electoral College had a different idea.
Oh, right. All those dead white guys came back and made him president along with Vladimir Putin. Okay, Mark, good luck.
I need it.
I hope you're the spokesman for the Democratic Party. It's so awesome. All right, North Korea fired a missile. A test earlier today, potentially it could reach the United States. They have not fired a missile that went as high as today's did. It's a whole new thing. The president responded just a minute ago. We'll tell you what he said. President Trump just responded to North Korea's new missile launch today and did it on Twitter. The president tweeted this, quote, "After North Korea's missile launch, it is more important than ever to fund our government and military. Democrats shouldn't hold troop funding hostage for amnesty and illegal immigration. I ran on stopping illegal immigration and won big. Now they can't threaten a shutdown to get their demands." End quote. Stay with Fox News for developments on that and every developing story. In the meantime, good night.